I mean, by the way, right after I wrote this, Krystal, Germany decided they're going to decommission their 2 nuclear power plants. And they're like, yeah, it's fine, even though 30% of their current power is still coming from coal-fired plants.
What's their rationale?
Nuclear is bad. It's a taboo.
Yeah,
exactly.
That?
Well, no, here's what they say. Well, we'll let it run for a year longer, but then eventually we're going to transition, even though 30% of the power. Same with France. I mean, they're screwed, totally screwed. They are already having a 10% ration. The UK, I talked about it in the show, 170 billion pounds. Germany has a trade deficit for the first time in modern history. I don't think people understand what it means for the largest manufacturing power in Europe to go into a trade. So much of the Eurozone and the Euro's finance currency depends on a strong Germany and then is backstopped by a strong France. To see these things go into the red, we haven't comprehended. I think December is going to be a genuine catastrophe.
Well, I also think
that a legit recession.
I also think that it is not going to be that much longer that the populations of these countries are willing to tolerate this direction because I mean you even see this is part of why Zelensky is making such a big push right now because he knows number one as it gets colder in Ukraine, then it becomes much more difficult for them to advance and have their counteroffensive. But number two, he knows that politically, he's on borrowed time. Populations are not going to allow this to continue, especially when, as we've documented a million times, the sanctions are not working. Russia actually did build up a lot of resiliency, apparently, and prepare for exactly this eventuality because they didn't trust that they wouldn't be cut off of the international finance system. And so there, as you pointed out before, article in New York Times today about how people in Moscow are like, war, what war? We're doing just fine. So even as we tried to levy every sanction, wage all-out economic war on them, they've still been fine in terms of funding their war machine. And yet, people in Europe and here, and also with food prices around the globe, I mean, the amount of famine and hunger around the globe is absolutely insane what's being exacerbated by this crisis. So I can't imagine that the politics of this are going to remain static the way they have been.
We'll see, right. So there have been limited protests in Britain, limited in France and in Germany. I think, look, I don't mean this with any disrespect. These are much more compliant people than we are over here. And they will just...
I don't agree with that. France is not known for its compliance.
Yeah, they still re-elected
These people
Macron.
protest.
Listen, they protest everything. They still vote for Macron.
I mean, the yellow vest protests, I'm not buying that. There's real strikes in the UK right now. I do not co-sign that view whatsoever. In fact, I think it's actually the opposite because a lot of times the hardship that people suffer here gets attributed to you're just not trying hard enough and the American dream and anyone can succeed, et cetera, which kind of moderates or militates against protests. So don't agree with that whatsoever.
Look, they may protest, they still re-elect Macron, they still genuinely capitulate. They didn't have that big of a problem with their vaccine.
Yeah, well, their only other option was Le Pen.
They're much more complicit in general and very okay with a lot more state power in action.
State power, yes, but these are people who definitely are willing to protest and strike, et cetera.
I mean, ask them. I think they would agree that they, anyway, whatever. Send in your European breakers. You can ask yourselves whether you are more compliant than we are or not. Regardless, I think it will change the politics there. We'll see. I don't know how much longer, but before that comes, there's still going to be a hell of a lot of pain. And that, what I care about, listen, it's their job to take care of themselves, but our financial systems are deeply intertwined. It could spark some serious issues here at home. And already our natural gas prices are sky high because they can't get enough of it. And, beyond us, and at least we can all afford it, quote unquote, the third world cannot. And they are going to be burning coal like nobody's business. Yeah, so, the Pakistanis, the Thais, many other economies which rely on cheap LNG to power their grids, they're just going to have straight up blackouts all over the winter. And so there's all kinds of horrific spillover effects.
It does seem like here there's been a rethinking a bit of nuclear, though. You see it in California.
I hope so.
Yeah,
Oliver Stone's got the new
see it in the
coming.
I'm interested to see that. You see it even in the Biden Inflation Reduction Act and that approach to nuclear. Yeah. So I think it has sort of opened some eyes there.
I hope so.
Cable news is ripping us apart, dividing the country, making it impossible to function as a society, and making it impossible to know just what is true and what is false. But the good news is they are failing and they know it.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history. We are building up here for the midterms, for the upcoming presidential election, but we need your help. So if you can help us out by becoming a premium member today at breakingpoints.com, we're trying to change America for the better and the entire world.
So what are you waiting for, guys? Go to breakingpoints.com and sign up and help us build a new mainstream.